Hello? Okay. Hi guys, it's Julesy. How's it going? I hope everyone can see me. I'm in focus. Let me turn the camera real quick. I should be fine. I should be in focus. I'm not using my webcam today. We are gonna have slightly nicer. Hopefully it comes through clearer because the last live chat I did was super blurry. So let me check, make sure we're in the group. We just running a little late. It's okay. Oh man, it's still showing up blurry. Whatever. Okay. Let me link the chat real quick to the event. Sorry, it's just a lot technically to set this up so that it could all run in the group. But here we go. Let's see. I mean, maybe somebody will join. Oh, two of you. Okay. Whatever. We're not going to do too long on the prologue. Sorry, these lashes are doing the most. Girl, it's this lash. All right. But we're going to discuss in full, okay, for everyone who's not watching the Super Bowl, when Chickenheads come home to Roost. Now we're going to be using the syllabus that was produced by Regina Strong, and also crowd participation, because I have read everything but the last chapter of this book. The whole point of the book club is that you can read at your own pace. You do not have to read at the rate like within the month. That's why we produce the syllabi. That's why we have these discussions, so that everything can be evergreen and you can come back to it at a later point. It's meant to be accessible, so we hope that it is accessible. Okay. Oop, didn't mean to do that. All right. So I picked this book because a lot of the book club was structured around the complex theory track. That's the track that personally I'm a lot more focused on, because I wanted to do something that really gave access to what I felt like was the Black history or Black theory that is caught up in elitist institutions. And that if we're going to tell people that they need to know certain things or they should have read certain things, we have to make those readings accessible without them going into debt or having to go to Harvard or Yale or something to get access to that stuff. And so when Chicken had come to Roost, I felt like it was a good pairing with A Voice from the South, because A Voice from the South is foundational Black feminist theory, which was written in 1892. And I think reading it in 2020, there's definitely points that you could argue or that you would not agree with, and that we have evolved in our theory, and we have evolved as a society, and we have evolved as Black feminists or womanists. And I felt like when Chicken has come to Roost, which was written in, I want to say 1999, there's also it was foundational in giving the term of hip hop feminist and connecting Black feminism to hip hop, which has, 98 was like a pivotal year for hip hop, and it has become a part of mainstream society and versus being like this fringe movement. And it greatly shapes a lot of our day-to-day. There's a lot of influence from the hip hop industry. And so I felt like this was a good book also because there's a lot of things that maybe folks don't necessarily agree with. Oh, wait, I'm just using my HD camera. That's why it's so blurry. Wow. For some reason, I thought it was, I wonder if I change it during the thing, will it do it? Okay, look, this is what I was like, girl, we did all this setup shit. Hold on. Ooh, okay, make my hand. Can it never not be? Okay, look. Wow. Can you see me in HD now? I think I'm still a little blurry. Light skinned friend look like Michael Jackson. All right. So I guess people are joining now. There's 6. And once you get this in HD, maybe more people will join. I look so much better. I'm going to look up at the camera and not down here. All right. So I promise next month the discussions will go much, much smoother. But the idea of these live discussions is that you can comment along, and I have the ability to add people in to comment along video. So you can either comment along by leaving a comment on the live chat, or you can also comment and say, what was it last time? I don't know. Just say you would like to talk, and I can send you the link so you can join the video chat. Similar to how like IG stories works, where you like request, I can send you a link and then add you to the video chat. So we're already 5 minutes in and we haven't even started talking about the book. I've been trying to get so we can, these intros won't be so long. But let's start. So I first read this book because a friend at NYU gave me a copy of her lime green version of this book, and I read it like in one day. I feel like we were at Far Rockaway on the beach in Brooklyn. Well, that's technically Queens, whatever. We were at the beach in New York City, and I thought this was it just made, at the time, I was like a sophomore in college, so it had to be like 2004, 2005. It just made so much sense to me. And it gave me a lot of language for the things that I was feeling, because at the time I had read Bell Hooks' Communion, and there were certain things that specifically I just did not agree with Bell Hooks at that time about. And this book was like, oh, wow. So now rereading the shit with you guys, remember to hold the book up on this side, rereading this book with y'all in January of 2020, there's a lot of things I don't agree with. There's a lot of things I have been highlighting in my little copy, and I had to go buy another copy because I had given my copy to someone to borrow and they never gave it back. I literally only had this copy for like 2 weeks and it's already tattered and battered because I have been going through it. One of the first things, correct, here we go. Joan Morgan, who now teaches at a university, I think she's at NYU or the New School. She's in New York now, because I've been trying to get her to do a author chat with us, but girl, she's responded. The man who represents her has not responded, so I don't know what's going there. But there are several themes, and we cover this in the syllabus, that come up in this book. Second wave feminism, which is feminism from the 1960s to 1980s. Hip-hop feminism, which is the term that Joan Morgan coined. Strong Black woman syndrome, the Black woman with the I can do it all mentality. Black masculinity is definitely discussed in this book. And I actually think probably one of the strongest points I disagree with her on is the coddling she does around Black masculinity. Baby mother syndrome, which I absolutely, that whole chapter, I was like, girl, what the fuck was I thinking back in 2004 or 5? Because in 2020, I'm just like, ew, like, no, sis. And then she does have a reoccurring theme of Black sisterhood, which I definitely believe in our sense of community. She breaks down her initial thoughts on feminists and the F word not making her, it didn't feel like her own. And she distinguishes between the feminism of her mother's era and the feminism of her era. And I understand and I appreciate the value of making that distinction. But I also think that in now in the 21st century, that particular to Black feminism, whether you, and when I say Black feminists, I'm talking like Combahee River Collective, like there is a manifesto that distinguishes Black feminism from mainstream feminism. And so even those of us who prefer to be, say, well, I'm a womanist, you know, that's a term coined by Alice Walker, who was associates with the women of the Combahee River Collective. And so womanism and Black feminism for me, though you could argue against it, I feel like are interchangeable. And I'm talking about sort of the same sort of community in theory between those two terms. And so I think we have evolved enough in 21st century in the Black feminist theory that we don't hold, well, not that we all don't, but that that there's a conscious discussion about working against an essentialist view of what it means to be a Black feminist, in that there are a plethora of identities that can come up within the praxis. And so I personally don't need to make this big distinguishment between the feminism of somebody who was born in the 1940s or 50s versus my own, but I do appreciate that sort of language that she gives for us to even articulate why we think we're different, even though we can respect the era of feminism that came before us. Folks can comment along. Is it blurry for y'all? It shows up real sharp for me on my end. I really don't know how it shows up on when you're logged into Facebook. Does she still agree with this characterization? Okay. She says, when she's talking about feminists, like the F word feminists, as in like white feminists, mainstream feminists, she says that the most visible were the braless, butch-cut anti-babes who seem to think the solution to sexism was reveling in all things male, except oddly enough, their clothing and mannerisms, and sleeping with each other. They use made-up words like woman with the Y, feminist with the Y, and threw mad shade if you asked them direct to the ladies' room. The others, straight and more femme, were all for liberation of women as long as it did not infringe on their sense of entitlement. They felt their men should share the power to oppress. They were the spiritual descendants of the early suffragettes and absolutely not to be trusted. I mean, I actually kind of would still agree with the latter sense of that when it comes to white feminists, especially in the face of like the way feminists are going after the legacy of Kobe Bryant. I do think there is this sort of power play that has definitely fed into the feminist movement that's been commodified for mainstream consumption and profit. I would love to know, if you ever got a chance to have a chat with her, how her own theories have evolved since writing this book. Does she still feel like Black female intellectuals and white women are in a similar boat and that they are not her crew? And also just a lot of the language she used around poor Black folks. I would hope that her beliefs on that have evolved, because there is a good bit of language around like dare to be on welfare, or is it in Hip Hop Feminist? Yes, where she says running consensual trains on 12-year-old girls. I don't like, there's nothing plausibly consensual about a 12-year-old who is having a train right now. Like, I would hope that like her politics have evolved past some of these statements. I get why in 1999, where we were at societally, why that would make sense to her. But now I'm just like, this is it. All right, still can't see y'all names. I need to hit up BeLive and find out why not, but I'm going to add some of your statements to the stream. To me, she centered white supremacist patriarchy surprisingly often. I actually think that is a thing that a book that I've recently read is Bell Hooks' Black Looks and Representation, and she has an entire chapter, it's in the other room, where she talks about how she's teaching a class and in realizing during discourse how the Black students can so comfortably talk about their Blackness in parallel to the trauma and the oppression from white supremacists, but they can't actually talk about what they love about their Blackness without removing the white gaze. And I think this is a theme that comes across, and we're reading Toni Morrison after this. And Toni Morrison, when she has discussed in past interviews about her writing Sula, said that she very specifically wanted to remove writing for the white gaze. And so I think there's a lot of books in the canon of Black literature where you can pick apart how they've centered sort of this white supremacist anything in the book. But I think what you're actually getting at is the patriarchy, that she feeds into the same sort of white supremacist patriarchy. But in 1999, when this book was written, had we progressed that far to where someone could even, like who in 99 would have checked her and said, sis, you know, there's a lot of, you're centering the male gaze here. You are, and I think we can say white supremacist because a lot of her messaging is poignantly not poignantly, I would say subversively anti-poor Black. So who in 99 would have known, like when we still had a thriving Black middle class, we ain't got that shit no more, who would have known to check her on that? But I do think there's a good bit of language in this book that suggests that at the time when she wrote it, that she had not reckoned with her own privilege and subconscious disdain for poor Black folks. Because again, there's nothing consensual about a 12-year-old having a train ran on them. Yeah. So the hip hop feminist chapter, have we not gathered? I thought it was interesting that she posits that she didn't feel like there was a community within the current iteration at that time point of Black feminists. I mean, I agree when she was like, you know, the text is very laborious and academic, factual, hence why the book club, this is what we're doing here. But when she says, I didn't really highlight anything, but I did mark the question of, have we not gathered? Is it more so that our gatherings always carry an air of elitism, which when you progress further into the book, does not Joan Morgan sort of carry that her own same sort of elitism? And so her gathering of hip hop feminists isn't really any different than the gatherings that have happened previously of, you know, Black women activists or Black women feminists. I think Regina touched on this in the first chat about when Morgan flexes that, don't you kind of dig patriarchy? Because this comes up several times in the book about wanting to be taken care of. You know, like in her discussion where she talks about talking to Chris Rock and him being like, who pays for the date? And trying to deal with that. I don't think, is it that you like patriarchy or that you enjoy a certain set of gender roles? I mean, I get it. We all like to have things paid for. Nobody likes to spend their own money. And I don't think we've gotten any further away from that because we've only gotten poorer since 1999. So, I would never position that as don't I like patriarchy. I would say that we each have a certain set, that part of our feminism should allow us to create the gender roles that we want to within our household, but that we understand that we're pushing for some sort of, I mean, I think you're allowed to say what your equality looks like, and dribbling over something about who pays for dinner. I mean, by all means, let the nigga pay for dinner. There are going to be other things that balance that out and that we can come together and decide for our own. I don't think that saying I don't want to pay for dinner means that I'm digging patriarchy. I mean, she positions it around having things done for her. And my whole thing is like, why does that have to come down to the man doing things for you? You might not like spending your own money in general. There are ways to get plethora of people to do that. I think what she's holding on to is this idea that she can use her womanness and her femininity and her body to get those things done for her. So it's like, you know, it doesn't need to rely on a man who has a sexualized gaze on you to be able to get people to service you. I didn't understand that connection she was making. My biggest issue in the biggest chapter that I did not agree with was baby mother. And yeah, that's where the book kind of really goes left for me. Up until that point, in the previous chapter where a strong black woman endangered black man, I kind of ebbed and flowed between, all right, well, this was written in a certain time period. No, the previous chapter I was talking about, I'm sorry, I need to be better at this. I was talking about hip hop feminists. Where she's talking about the things you kind of dig about patriarchy. And no, I don't, because I could say that I like people to pay. I don't like spending my own money, and I don't like doing things for myself, but that doesn't need to rely on someone having a sexualized gaze at me in order to still net those same results. All right. Let me go be congruent and not skip too far ahead so y'all can follow up. So from fly girls to bitches and hoes, I didn't really there wasn't really anything that I thought that stuck out to me in this chapter. I think we haven't really progressed from what she's discussing here. I think we're kind of in the same boat as we were in 1999. Maybe we've gone from a 40 and a blunt to lean and syrup. And we still definitely have a very strong problem in hip hop with representation, with the glorification of drugs. And, you know, we could all make jokes or whatever about Future, and, you know, she belongs to the streets. But like, as Morgan posits in From Fly Girls to Bitches and Hoes, that a lot of the way that these men, what they're rapping about is, it's not, you know, they might be flexing about all the money and the bitches and the drugs they have access to, but they're depressed. They have anxiety. They're talking about generational trauma that's been passed on to them. They're talking about things that have really grave impacts on the community. And I honestly think that simply saying, oh, the music is the super negative influence, but more so that, like, it's still showing that specifically at this point, Black men are not doing well, and that they don't have the outlet or the resources to deal intimately with the sort of mental health issues and the trauma that they have gone through in life. I think this was one of the chapters that I would still agree with largely. The one thing I didn't agree with again, though, in this chapter is the way she still faults women. Like when she says, it's time to stop ignoring the fact that rappers meet bitches and hoes daily, women who reaffirm their depiction of us on vinyl. No. Like when we, like, there's several parts of this book where, like, how are you skimming over the system that we live in? How are you skimming over the power dynamics that we exist in, right? Like, when men have the money and the power, or even not the money, but they have the power, and women who are coming from a certain economic level and they have no sort of leverage other than their own body to get ahead, like, no, I don't think that we can give men a pass for using the term bitches and hoes because there are women who are okay with being called bitches and hoes. I think we look at what creates this dichotomy between us. What power dynamic is actually at play here? who's gaining from what in this scenario? Like, girl. But I did agree with this. This is a sentence that kind of really wraps up, why I launched the book club. If it intends to move past theory and become functional, it has to rescue itself from the ivory towers of academia. I would agree, but sis, the way you're doing it, it's still, and this is what I wrote in the margins on the next page, but who has the power? And is it really just one man? His team, it's his team / handlers. Because she goes into talking about Sir Mix-a-Lot videos and like how he can fight 150 women. This one man can fight 150 women to shake their ass. And it's like, that's not how music videos are curated. That's not how they're produced. That's not, you go to Miami Gardens, bitches ain't got no option, and you wave some money in the front of them and say, hey, we can provide all this access and needs if you do this thing for us. Like, come on. What's the actual power dynamic at play? Strong Black woman. How did you guys feel about the strong Black woman and how she defined it? I thought that a lot of what she said is similar to what I've said in discussing, the strong Black woman stereotype, or what's the word for it? Image. But I keep going back to, she wrote this book in 99. So sometimes when I read it and I'm catching this air of like elitism, this air of like, I'm that, but I'm better than that. I'm wondering, is it just a change in time? Is it my own progression? Because I didn't necessarily feel like this when I first read the book back in 2004. Yeah, I'm trying to see who's leaving what comment. And so here we go. The internal misogynoir who left this comment. It's girl, Dixney Gemini girl. How I say your first name? The internal misogynoir. Though we are giving consideration to the times we've written in, and it's tricky because it's hip hop centered, the misogyny and classism. Yes, the classism in this book is very high. But misogynoir was it a term in 99? So did we even have the language around being able to address this sort of thing? I do appreciate though when what she on one side is trying to do with describing the strong Black woman, in that one, not feeding into the exceptionalism, right? Where she says, for every woman like Harriet Tubman, there are 20 who died in childbirth, went mad, or became old by the time they were 30. The existence of Harriet Tubman only meant that some unusually talented women had emerged despite a vicious and cruel system of human devastation. And that reminder that like our ability to just live day to day is enough testament to our strength, and that we do not have to become superheroes in order to be respected or even acknowledged. And then for once, she does acknowledge the systems that surround us, right? This human devastation that has happened and continued even post-slavery, particularly around the ownership of Black women and Black women's labor. However, it still feels like she gets to certain points though, and she kind of snubs her nose at some of the things Black women have done to survive. But it's true, the line between myth and mortality becomes dangerously irreversibly blurred. And the myth also tricks many of us into believing we can carry the weight of the world. I don't know. Do y'all have any thoughts about the Strong Black Woman chapter? I guess it really don't get good till we get to the next chapter, which the Strong Black Women and Endangered Black Men. This is not a love story. I I appreciate her vulnerability with acknowledging her own, I want to say licentiousness because that's a word from Voice of the South, acknowledging her own sort of attachment to ain't shit niggas. We have all had those moments. So I appreciate her being honest about it. But there's something with her willingness to so quickly forgive the men in the way she does not forgive the women. It just is not okay, sis. I disagree with the part where she was saying the men we attract, allow in our lives are reflections not only who, but where we are, spiritually and emotionally. They're bottom line reminders of how we feel about ourselves. I don't agree. And I really dislike how often we tell Black women specifically that who they partner with, or we look back at like who our mothers, our aunts, or grandmothers have partnered with, and we say that the fact that they ended up with niggas who turned out to be ain't shit is an indictment on their ability, on their capabilities as women, or where they were at spiritually and emotionally. And I was talking to my homegirl over Christmas, right? And she kind of has a tenuous relationship with her mother. And, you know, I'm talking and I'm like, you know, like, do we really think the dating pool is better than the dating pool of our parents? Like, you know, I think it's easy to say that, oh, your mom did something that you would never do for a man, but like, I'm not afraid to throw this front of the bus, but she's fucking a married man. And, you know, I'm like, girl, look what we're doing now. Like, look at the situations we're in now. And I don't think it's so much that our ancestors, the women that came before us, coddled or, you know, laid on the ground for an ancient ass Negro. It is that at the time societally where they were at, they thought that the men that they were engaging with were good and decent. And then over time, it turns out, oh shit, he ain't shit, and neither is none of the other niggas around him. And so a lot of us end up in situations where we think we're engaging with men who are good and decent. And like, I just went through a situation myself. I set up all these boundaries. I had all these requirements. I met a nigga who was like, yes, I'm gonna meet you here, 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 here. This nigga red bell hooks, all about love, highlighted this shit, and he still turned out to be ain't shit. That's not an indictment on where I am emotionally. I'm emotionally way more mature than he is. We went to therapy together last week, and the therapist was like, yeah, you're emotionally mature, and he's not. Okay, this is not an indictment on where I'm at spiritually, because you can't always control the other person that you're with. You can't, and I think we tend to talk in absolutes as if people meet the person that you know, the man that someone ends up being is the man that they were when we met them. And I was, you know, making the point to my homegirl, particularly like, do we realize what the crack epidemic did to the community? Like, it's not like these women were meeting men who were hooked on crack when they met them. You know what I mean? Like, you could have met someone that had to work at the post office, had a decent job, and you know, particularly to Black folks, life happens to us so much. I don't know why we can't give more grace, and why we are so quick to suggest that, you know, there's a pathology of just bad decision making that's rampant in our community. Who said that? Alana, Endangered Black Man was the best chapter. Please, I would love to hear more. What did you like so much about this chapter? I'm trying to go back and forth so I can see who said what. Okay, Andrea is saying, I also dislike the implication that if a man is no good to us, it's our fault. We can all put up faces when it suits us. Also, if a woman allowed the opportunity to be an ASN, what's the ASN? it is likely that she also gave you the opportunity to be an ain't shit nigga. She also gave you the opportunity to be a good man. That's a word. That's a word. I mean, I think this chapter gives you a lot to think about. And that's why I think this is still a worthwhile read, even if there are things about in her writing that put you off, because it puts you in a position where you're forced to be able to articulate and think through, well, what don't you actually agree with? And why don't you agree with it? And how have we, it also gives you a good realm to see how we as a society have progressed. Someone was born in 99, how old would they be now? 21? It's been 21 years. What is my math right? Oh my gosh, are we getting old? No, 20 years. Yeah, 21. I can't count for shit. I can read a book, but I can't count. Ooh, when she said endangered Black men are wholly incompatible with daughters raised to be a strong woman. Now, why? Why, Joan? Why are they like, this is not the, and then, you know, she just kind of leaned into the same pathos of, oh, the independent single Black mother raising strong Black women and, you know, never having the image of a Black man to take care of her. Mothers play powerful roles in determining their son's ability to respect women. Don't the fathers? Like, even if it is by absentia, whatever the fuck that word is, you know what I'm trying to say. Don't the men too? Like, this response, like, I don't know, sis. No. No. And I definitely didn't agree with the end of the chapter. She says, we must forgive Black men for not protecting us against, or is she quoting someone? Against slavery, racism, white men, our confusion, or their doubts. And Black men have to forgive Black women for our own sometimes dubious choices, divided loyalties, and lack of belief in the possibilities. Because only when our sons and daughters know that forgiveness is real, existent, and that those who love them practice it, can they form bonds as men and women that really can save and change our community. I would, if you disagree with me, I would also love to hear your opinion. If there were things that you enjoyed about this chapter, or enjoyed about the book in general, please dial in. I don't think forgiveness is the panacea or the answer to things. I think there is actual praxis, which means, to put labor behind your words, to put things into practice. I do feel like it requires more than just, oh, I forgive you. And I mean, even forgiveness requires labor. Like, what's an apology without the labor behind the apology? Yeah. Okay, Alana is saying that she loved this chapter because it dissects our relationship with our father, affects our choices and relationships subconsciously. However, I think your critiques are valid. Well, thank you. And she also liked the last 2 pages of the book. I understand how they make you feel good. I appreciate the feel-goodness of them because she does kind of round it out and come back to the importance of Black love. And I personally do agree in the importance of Black love. I deeply resent that it still requires a great burden on Black women to net that Black love. And that's what we in therapy for currently. The therapist looking at me crazy. And I'm like, bitch, I'm not crazy. And I'm talking about. And then let's move on to Love Note. I didn't really have any thoughts on Love Note like that. It was one of those. I thought it was, she talks about her lover. It's also a very short chapter. It didn't really kind of resonate with me much. I did appreciate her now, like the discussion she has around pertinent to the things that are happening on YouTube on swirling. And when she was talking to one of her homegirls about her harem of lovers, and them pointing out that the white man should complain about the least, and her acknowledging it wasn't because he was white, he simply had more of himself to give. I mean, I'm not opposed to Black women dating outside of their race. I think whenever anyone who dates outside their race tries to, it's particular to the Black community, tries to suggest that other races of people of either gender are better than the people from our own community, we have to understand that we are all collectively dealing with generational trauma, and that we are all trying to deal with sort of this trauma that hasn't really let up much in the past 40 years. And we're at a point now where we're kind of regressing politically, and losing our rights. And the access and equity that at one point in time was slightly provided has entirely been ripped away. You know, I say it in jest, but I'm dead ass serious. We are all one medical emergency away from poverty. We're not doing well economically. And so I get how someone might, you know, if they have the option and the access to, that they can check out and date someone who doesn't come with that generational trauma. I don't have enough melanin to do any of that. I refuse to give birth to a white man, so we stuck with niggas. Wow. I don't. Oh. Unconditional love can come from God as well as people's in our lives. I think you were saying that you did. Oh, I keep adding the wrong one, but sorry. I was trying to add Alana's point about, I didn't like the last point about depending on God's unconditional love. I had this conversation the other day on a panel for The Color Purple. I enjoyed the chapter about the false narrative of the single Black woman. It's not that genetically we're stronger than our male counterpart. It's that we have been forced to amuse that role of the strong Black woman. We aren't afforded the luxury of being weak. Being a Black woman is a full-time, taxing, emotionally exhaustive job. Yes. Thank you, Uchenna. I concur. Is it Uchenna or Uchenna? Yes, being a Black woman is taxing. And I did also appreciate her acknowledging that we should be respected for just being, that we don't have to be anything more than what we are. All right, now chapter Baby Mother. I would say this is the chapter that I disagreed with the most. Okay, I did not like, I think this is where the classism, the elitism really jumps out here. The misogynoir, the patriarchy. Patriarchy has no gender. It really kind of, there was a lot of eeks for me in this chapter, particularly with, I wonder how many sane, single, and pregnant Black women once thought the same. She's in reference to this, so she starts the chapter off by talking about like this clearly not mentally not all there Black woman who was like, I guess, at the coffee shop with a caretaker, who was like launched into a fervent prayer about, please God, give me a son. And somehow she's connecting this back to what she feels like is the pathos in the Black community of Black women who think that children or having children will somehow get men to love them or somehow fill holes within their lives. And when I initially read this, some of the things she's talking about, I'm like, she actually name checks the book that I think would prove a lot of her points wrong. She name checks Mary Frances Berry's The Politics of Parenthood, which is a history book that lays out the history of how the ideals of motherhood and womanhood have come about since the inception of the United States of America, and how it is through her. It's a fact book. It's not a sociological book. She was literally laying out the facts of the laws and the time. So it's not necessarily like a dynamic or interesting read, but it's a good read because it does give you a lot of historical fact. And she's talking about, she connects how the ideas of womanhood and motherhood are directly connected to like white supremacy. Like the whole inception of marriage in America and fatherhood was around ownership of his wife, children, and slaves. And how that, you know, and the kind of quagmire that has created for the Black community, though, even though we received our freedom, you know, we never had the mother who was allowed to be home. Our labor was always owned. So it's just interesting that, to get back to Chickenheads, when Chickenheads come home to Roost, that Morgan would say so many things that are degenerative towards single Black mothers, if she's aware of the books that have explained the unique intersection that Black women sit at. It's like, why do so many sisters still believe that babies and mothers are package deals? That they will be the magical love glue that permanently binds us to a man who never intended to stay. I mean, maybe in the 21 years, I don't know. In 99, I was 15, so I wasn't thinking about nobody babies. But maybe in the past 21 years, we have evolved so greatly that I cannot relate at all to that. I don't know what the chicks and Chickenheads and the strong Black women was doing in 99, because I was still going to the Kingdom Hall 3 times a week at that point in my life. But in the year of 2020, I'm going to say that we need to let go of this idea that full-grown women are really having children simply to keep marriages together or to keep a man in their life, and that they are somehow less than or stupid for even doing that. I don't know. I guess there are some people who do still think, okay, I'm going to have a child because that'll keep him in my life. I just don't think it's as big I don't think it's that as big of a factor as we would like to make it out to be. Maybe that's where I land. I would love to know how she comes to the conclusion that, in stark contradiction to the feminist hype, the accomplished super sister who is not pressed about being married, has reached a certain age, has made substantial loot, and got pregnant intentionally, the event is often unplanned in the midst of unstable or non-existent relationships accompanied by mad drama. Like, what does she come to this conclusion? And again, maybe we have just progressed so much as a society, as access, because I do know plenty of Black women who are not pressed about getting married, who have made substantial loot, who have decided that I'm not willing to settle or go through the mad drama of engaging a man on an emotionally intimate level just in order to have children. So I am going to have a child on my own. And it does not, it's not some like, I'm not, it just is like, girl, like, how are we coming to the conclusion that this is non-stable? Like, is it better to be in an emotionally abusive relationship and to raise children in an emotionally abusive household, or to raise children in a communal setting as a single Black mother? I think, and Mary Frances Berry in The Politics of Parenthood has a whole chapter where she shows the statistics of how Black women in matriarchal-led households are actually capable of raising healthy children, emotionally healthy, sound children who can become accomplished citizens. You know what I mean? Like, whoo. All right, who only 27? All right, Jenna, let's see. She said, reading the baby mother chapter was like holding up a chapter to myself. I realized how silly I looked. I was biased based on my close relationships. All had a baby to feel empowered or to be forever attached to a man. I seen it a dozen of times, but I just placed a blanket on everyone. And then she says, I had to apologize to a lot of people. I don't think there's anything wrong with however women decide to become mothers. That if you truly, in your heart of hearts, want to become a mother, whether it is as a single mother and you do IVF, whether it is you get a turkey baster, you make a deal with your gay friend, you know, you're privileged enough that you meet someone who wants to just co-parent with you. Whether you just find a nigga you can put up with it long enough to be like, oops, I got pregnant. And then you go about your, you know what I mean? Like, okay, when you look at how bad the dating pool is, when you look at how bad that we as women have since 99 progressed, and I don't think men have progressed very much since 99, you know, I'm just not more shame for how anyone decides to get to the end goal of having a child. All right. Dixney, I'm sorry, sis. I'm effing up your name. She says, when I was reading this chapter, I was reminding myself that the book is 20 years old. However, I was also thinking, would Angelou say this? Angela Davis, Audre Lorde? I don't think so. I definitely don't think Audre Lorde would say this. Maya Angelou doesn't write theory. And Angela Davis, no. But I also think that Audre Lorde would not be accepting of hip hop. I would have to look up what Angela Davis has written about hip hop and the misogyny that exists in that realm of music. That's a really good question, though. And this is part of the reason why I would love to get Morgan in for an author chat, because I think it would be great to hear where she's at now in 2020. But who knows? Like, how do you make the point that the correlation between single-parent homes, teenage pregnancy, crime, and poverty have been demonstrated ad nauseum? And I mean, I guess in 99, we were still going with the Moynihan report, right? Like, at that point, the way that we've received it now in 2020, I mean, no, because it got criticism when it was written. There was criticism of it in 93. There's criticism of it in Politics and Parenthood. She spent a whole chapter criticizing the Moynihan report. So it's kind of like, how do you skim over the crack epidemic, the lack of education, of access to quality education, quality jobs, healthcare, grocery stores? Like, there's very basic things that a lot of Black communities don't have equitable access to that lead to teen pregnancies, crime, and poverty, and have very little to do with matriarchal or single Black female households. This chapter really grinded my gears. And then she takes quotes from Bill Stephanie of the group Public Enemy, and I just don't know how you go from doing all this research to getting the opinion of a guy from the music industry. And this is, yes, the section about paternal rights. I would love to hear what your thoughts on it, because I definitely have thoughts. I'm sorry, I can't see who left this comment to give you credit. Let me refresh my screen right quick. Alana, thank you. You thought she made a lot of assumptions. Okay, I not only thought she made a lot of assumptions, I'm just like, who was Stephanie to quote him as if his opinion is of validity? It's pronounced Donnie, girl, with all them X's. Okay. So he's quoted as saying there was a time in African American history when marriage was an important value in the community. When was this time? And how the hell did you read Politics to Parenthood? How the hell have you read any of Mary Frances Berry? And it's not hard academic reading, it's just boring, but it's good. How have you read any of it and come to the conclusion that there was a time in history where the community of niggas was allowed to have nuclear families? Every time someone starts with the single Black female, the downfall of the Black community, when the fuck was we nuclear families outside of Bill Cosby, the Cosby family? When? There was a brief period post World War II where a handful of niggas came back as veterans, accessed their veterans benefits, and we have a creation with the movement of Black folks up the Mississippi of like a medium middle class. But at no point in history has the Black community had a majority of nuclear households. But anyhow, he's trying to make the point about that there was a time where men they had a moral responsibility to their children. When was this time period? And that there was enough societal pressure on a man who got a woman pregnant to marry her. That was being responsible. I think you might be talking about the whites, because that wasn't never happening for the Blacks. The female independence and reproductive choice grants women the power to control the lives and destinies of unwilling fathers via their bodies. Okay, I can sum up, because there's so many things I highlighted in this chapter that I had issue with. And yes, is this Alana saying it again? Dang, I don't know why my the Facebook page isn't auto-populating the comments for me. Oh, Tiffany. Tiffany is saying they just need to wear their condom. They just need to wear condoms. That's their right, period. This is I'm gonna have this is one of the vulnerability. The nigga that I was seeing has an 11-year-old child. He does not like the mother of his child. And I gave him no ground. We had an entire conversation. And I literally said to this nigga, you was of the 25 years old. You were 2 decades and 5 years. And you bust a nut raw and a bitch you ain't like when you was fucking her. You can't say shit now, nigga. You can't. Like, she ain't did nothing to you. She ain't done nothing to you. You was so invested in the nut, you didn't think about the consequences. The man controls getting a woman pregnant. Lest a woman sticks a hole in the condom, the man controls getting a woman pregnant. There is a small window every month that women can get pregnant. Now, I will say we should in 2020 have a better way of tracking our ovulation. It's not 100% vis-a-vis, but you know, I think maybe we have a better understanding of our bodies and ovulations, and that, you know, you can get the little pee sticks, pee on a stick, and it tell you whether you ovulating or not. It can check your HCG levels or whatever. Sis, if it's that important for a nigga to nut, he needs to download the Glow app with you and track your ovulation. But she gives this example of a man who supposedly had his life destroyed because he had a one-night stand with a woman who got pregnant, but he was engaged. He was engaged to another woman. And that him and his wife or fiance were like, we don't want anything to do with this child. Please have an abortion. And she was like, nah, but I'm gonna put you on child support. And she's like, and Morgan is saying, how dare this woman put this nigga on child support because he didn't want the kid. This is my whole thing. First of all, why was you fucking another woman you just met raw when you have a whole fiance at home? Also, you could control the nut. Take it out and put it on her ass. Like, come on, it's really not that difficult. Like, it doesn't, like, literally, the man controls it. And no, someone is saying, but what about in the reverse? What about in cases where a woman gets an abortion against the man's say? I mean, oh, fucking well, my nigga, you're not, like, do we understand what pregnancy does to the female body? Like, carrying a child to term changes the entire composition of your body. If a woman elects to not carry a child, by all means, mate with someone who wants to have children. This is called having a conversation before you have sex. And if I have the understanding, I mean, it's wild how many men will not have this conversation with you and have no problem nutting raw. Like, I just feel like if you at the point where it's that important for you to not wear a condom and to catch the feeling of the release in some tight ass pussy, if it's that important to you, then you need to be having the right conversations before you hit that release. And it's really not that hard. Hey, if you get pregnant, where are you at? I'm at a point where if I got pregnant, I would not get an abortion. That's a conversation we're going to have before we have sex. It's really not that difficult to have that conversation. And again, the man, it's literally, I cannot get pregnant without the man's sperm. It's in his power. So no, at the point where you've released your sperm into the woman, you've already made your decision. And so if she decides to keep the child, you should have let one again. You should not be having sex with women. So if Joe Morgan can end this chapter with, I don't have sex with men who I cannot envision fathering children with because I now understand the risk, then why don't men carry that same burden? That's a mutual burden that you mutually enter into the bedroom with. Hey, Julesy, this chapter, I'm trying to see who it is. This chapter on paternal rights pissed me off. When dude said if the man doesn't want the child and the woman decides to keep the child, he shouldn't have to pay child support. That's bullshit to me. Absolutely. You made that decision when, Coco Nicole, thank you, sis. You made that decision when you elected to not pull the nut out and place it somewhere else. I don't understand what do we think is happening with men when they have that? I don't think, why do we not think that men have any responsibility to make better choices when it comes to sex? Why do we find so many ways to tell women to be smarter, to be more, to make better decisions, and we don't expect nearly the same of men? You can't convince me that busting a nut inside is that great of a feeling that you lose all common sense. She puts a lot of onus on the woman to not get pregnant, and she didn't really give any reasonable argument on why that is. Concurred. I feel like every argument she gave, every example she gave, I was literally like, bruh, how do you even give an example of a nigga that's cheating on his wife? How? We are over an hour here. Who is gonna watch these long ass discussions? Oh my gosh. Okay, chickenhead envy. Again, the classism. I really don't like this idea of suggesting that there's a pathology amongst hood Black women. And as if that I am so different from women. I mean, this is my whole thing. Like, at some point, if you're going to talk about the strong Black woman and that Black women should not have to be superheroes in order to be respected or carry the burden of an entire community in order to be respected, then don't you also understand that your access to education, your ability to climb out of the hood is not simply because of your tenacity, but there's also a great deal of privilege that goes into any of our abilities to ascend social class. And one thing that I would hope that anyone has learned in rising social class or switching up social class is how it's not meant to allow everyone in. Like I've talked about this before, I spent a great deal of time in the past 3-4 years trying to get into certain rooms and getting access to certain social circles. And I got the access. And then I got there and I realized, oh shit, there ain't no way for me to turn around and tell my community how to do this. Because it is not meant to allow the community in. It is meant to allow individuals in, right? So my ability to go to college, to get a certain pedigree, to get access to certain social circles and intellectual circles is not meant to be open to everyone. And so I therefore I've made a very conscious effort to not turn my nose up to those who do not have the same access as myself. And I feel like in Chickenhead Envy, Morgan fails. She fails. And she kind of goes back to the same thing she was talking about earlier about the being taken care of and having a man pay for things and how envious she is of this sort of these sugar babies. And I think a lot of this is simply that at this point in her writing, she has not reconciled with her desire to be in a relationship. She not good being single. She not. Because I don't think you would, there is literally not a single woman I envy based on their ability to be in a partnership. Because I know I'm not her and I can't be her. So there's just not these things that I don't believe that if I, why would I want to be with a man who wants a woman who he can have power over? Why would I envy a woman who can't start her own business because her husband simply wants her to be a kept woman? Why would I envy a woman who's using a married man to start her business, especially if now that we're into 2020, we believe in chakras and energies and all those things? Why would I not, don't I want to protect my energy? Don't I want to protect the energy that I allow into my personal and intimate space? So why would I envy people that are doing things that, in all honesty, I would, because of my own integrity and ethics, would never do? I don't know, if people had thoughts otherwise, let me know, because this is the last chapter I read. I have not gotten to, this is an update. I have not read the last chapter in my copy of the book, but this is an update because there ain't no way she wrote this shit in 99. Beyonce, Black feminist art in this Oshun business. Beyonce knows Carter dropped Lemonade, her 6th solo album. Yeah, this is an update to my edition of the book. I'll have to go back and read this. Well, it's 2 pages. This is the only thing I did not read. Oh, she's just singing the praise of Lemonade. Okay. I don't really think there's much to parse out of this. I mean, I think Lemonade is genius, and also, so Naima had tweeted today that Lemonade was a scam because she started off with "Pray You Can." What's the title of the song with the Isaac Hayes sample on it? Who the fuck do you think I am? But then ends up singing Sandcastles by the end of the album because she forgave a cheating ass nigga. Look, dating is hard, and I just don't think I think on no end of the spectrum am I judging any woman's decision in trying to love a Black man because it's rough out here in the streets. Yeah, the afterword and the Beyonce chapter are definitely new, which is why I didn't necessarily include them. But all right, what I might do, because I want more people to join the book club in general, and just to remind people, because there's 500 and some people in this group, and it's kind of hard to get people to engage. But there's also restrictions on how I can notify people of things. But we'll do a proper review on my YouTube channel of this book. I don't know, would it be worth it? I think this book is. I would love to have this is a great book if you want to argue with your homegirls. I would definitely say if you have friends that you brunch with, if y'all want to start your own little book club amongst yourselves, y'all can start with this book. Have them come all purchase the syllabus, and then y'all can all argue about it over mimosas, because there's plenty to argue about with this book. But for all of this thing, I absolutely did not like the baby mother chapter. Chickenhead envy, I'm a 2 out of 5 on. I do think, again, what's great about this book is that it gives you a certain amount of language to be able to to wrap up what you either agree with or don't agree with. I think that it again, the language is important, right? Because you might have certain thoughts in agreement, or you might have certain thoughts in disagreement, and you didn't know how to parse it together, but she's giving you the language and the words and the foundational, the starting point in order to kind of, you know, take it which way you want. And I think one thing that's very important to remember overall, when it comes to reading any sort of theory, right, whether you're reading about economic theory or feminist theory, is that theory is supposed to go through a synthesis. And not that someone just states their opinion as fact and we run with it, but we are supposed to interrogate it, argue it, and then, you know, output something new. And it's not always, like, there's not one singular Black feminist theory. It is an evolution, and it is a canon of a plethora of theories with some basic foundational core messaging. And so that's why we read When Chickenheads Come Home to Roost. And I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed this very long chat. All right, I'm gonna head out now. Thank y'all for engaging with me. The camera's up here. I'm sorry for looking down so much, but I hope the quality was a little bit better. Let me know. All right, I'll holler at y'all later. Deuces.